The final piece of this story is really special. I have to stop crying on the podcast. It's not okay. All of the electricity in our room cut out. Lights, everything, dead. Goddess Hathor handed me the baby. What does this mean? You will be a mother. I don't know if I'm ready for it to be soon. I have a lot of fears around that. The psychic also told me that there was a goddess waiting for me in Egypt. I saw this key going into my heart. I saw a guide having blue skin, elf-like ears. I don't really know what happened in that moment. The tears just started rolling down my face. Egypt is said to be an amplifier. Anything that you're bringing in can really be amplified. My psychic, she had me do visualization. Why are you seeing this like avatar looking being? I honestly felt like I was kidding myself. That's not the guide, Sam. Like, where did that come from? The rays from the sun just start pouring all the way through the top of my head, being so tired that I wanted to die. And we both screamed. We were like, ah! This guard direct me to this room, force me into this spot, and give me. So before I went on this pilgrimage to Egypt, I decided to have a psychic reading with a trusted psychic I've worked with before to really just kind of prepare myself energetically to understand how to make the most of my experience there and to really clear any energies, to do this sort of like, you know, energy cleansing, clearing before I left, because Egypt is said to be an amplifier, especially in places like the pyramids. So anything that you're bringing in can really be amplified. And this comes down to, you know, energetic stuff, wounds, limiting beliefs, like, but also you guys know that I had that experience at the end of last year with the psychic attacks. And so if you have anything, any energies, entities, things connected, attached to you, around you, I didn't want to bring anything that wasn't mine into Egypt, because I wanted to be really clean and really clear and just go in with only my stuff and let that be the only thing that was going to be amplified for me. So I booked a reading with this psychic that I've worked with before. And I was like, hey, let's just do an energy clearing before I go to Egypt. I just want to make sure that I'm all good and get me set up and, you know, feeling ready to go into this experience. So, on this call with my psychic, she had me do a visualization. And in this visualization, I saw a guide who was meant to walk me through this kind of portal. And she was like, notice what the guide looks like. And I saw this guide as having like blue skin and these kind of elf-like ears, okay? And I remember thinking to myself, you know, when you're in a visualization and someone's like, see yourself like living your best life, or what your future looks like, or your highest self, or literally anything. Sometimes you see stuff and it surprises you. And so you think that you're like making it up and you're like tripping yourself out and you're like, wait, did I just like invent that? That's so fucking random. Why am I seeing that? And so I remember in the visualization being like, that's not the guide, Sam. Like, where did that come from? Why are you seeing this like avatar looking being? Like, drop in, like focus, like you want to be in this experience, like stop making things up. But I know, and you know, that most of the time when we receive information, images, sounds, feelings, knowings in visualizations, like we're not making it up. Most of the time it's just the ego that's telling us that we're making it up, because it's rejecting what we're seeing, either because we don't think it's possible, or it seems really random, or we don't know what it means. And so our human brains are trying to make sense of things, and they're like, oh, you just made that up, right? So I remember seeing this guide, and it had blue skin and these elf-looking ears, and I was like, all right, well, whatever, we'll just roll with that. I guess that's the guide. But like, I honestly felt like I was kidding myself a little bit. And then I also saw a couple of different symbols in that vision that I didn't really know what they meant, but I knew that I was meant to see these symbols for one reason or another. And the first one that came to me was a key. And when I saw this key, like I knew it was a key, but it looked different than just like a regular house key. So I was like, to describe it, I would describe it as kind of like a skeleton key, because it was a key, but like it had almost like a hole or like a loop on the one end. So I was like, okay, a skeleton key. And then I saw this key going into my heart. And like a couple seconds after I saw the key kind of like floating and moving to go into my heart, the psychic said, as she was continuing to guide, she said, I'm being told that whatever symbol you're seeing right now needs to be placed somewhere on your body. So you can go ahead and place it somewhere now. And there's a message that comes along with this symbol. And so I was like, wow, that's crazy. Like I was already seeing the symbol being placed somewhere on my body before she even instructed that. And so I was like, okay, it must be meant to go on my heart. And so the message that I got that was supposed to be connected to, this key that was going to my heart was open your heart. And it seemed pretty basic, like non-assuming, not too creative, like nothing too crazy happening here, but it will be relevant later in the story when we get to talk about the reading with the medicine man. So, and we'll also get back to why I saw that blue guide with the kind of elf ears. But when I arrived in Egypt, in the temples, when we started visiting some of the temples, I started seeing the symbol of the Ankh everywhere. It's if you've been there, it's everywhere. They're selling it everywhere. It's like one of the most popular, well-known hieroglyphs. It's a super common symbol, and it's this symbol of the Ankh. And I realized, since I had been seeing it in so many places on so many temple walls, that was the key. The key that I had seen in my vision was actually an Ankh. And that's why it had that like loop at the top. Because if you know what the Ankh symbol looks like, it kind of looks like a key, but it has a loop at the top. It sort of looks like a cross. Google a picture of it if you've never seen it. But also, if you're watching this on video, I got this necklace while I was there of the Ankh, right? Because a few days after I realized and I connected those dots of like, oh my gosh, the key that I saw in my vision is actually the symbol of the Ankh. And I saw that Ankh going into my heart, and the message was open your heart. A few days after that, we went to a jewelry store and we were looking at all of this beautiful jewelry, gold, stones, like just incredible stuff. And I wanted to get something, but I wanted it to be like small and dainty, and it was going to be real gold. So I knew that there was going to be a high price tag to it, but I was like, I really want the Ankh. And so I started looking at these different Ankhs, and this is the one that I ended up getting. I feel like it suits me the best, but essentially here is the key that I saw from my vision sitting right on my heart as just a reminder of that message that I received, and so much like the memory of, my experience and my awakening and the spiritual connection that happened for me in Egypt. So I cherish this piece a lot, and it means way more to me than just, buying a classic symbol of Egypt and slapping it on. I feel like it really has significance for me. So what is the Ankh? You might be wondering. The Ankh is also known as the key of life. It represents the concept of eternal life and the breath of life. The Ankh can be used as a portal or a mirror to the other side, and it can serve as a channel of communication to the divine. It's an amulet of spiritual healing. The Ankh is worn for good luck and fortune and to protect against bad energies. The Ankh was also considered a symbol of fertility in ancient Egypt, and it was believed to symbolize the sexual union of a man and a woman. If you kind of look like the loop and then the, straight part, you get the picture if you're watching on video. But they say that this could be interpreted as just another way that the Ankh is representing life itself, right? The creation of life. So there's a lot of really beautiful meanings of what the Ankh is, but it's traditionally called like the key of life. People also say that it's representing, this circular part is the feminine and this straight part is the masculine. So it's kind of like the divine union of the masculine and the feminine. You have that cross in the middle, and then the loop coming up over the top, which people have said can be symbolic of the sun rising over the horizon. There's a lot of different meanings of it. And a lot of people also believe that it was kind of like the symbol that they originally pulled from for the cross. So there's a lot of meanings to it. And it feels really, I don't know, the one that I got, it just feels meaningful to me and it feels special. So continuing on with things that happened in this psychic reading, okay? The psychic also told me that there was a goddess that was waiting for me in Egypt who wanted to initiate me, and that something big was going to happen for me between days 2 and 7. And so we will get into what exactly that was in a little bit. But first, we have to talk about the blue gods and goddesses, okay? So if you remember, I saw that blue guide in my visualization, and that's kind of what we'll get into. So we went into one of the days early on, we went into the Karnak temple, and I saw these depictions on the temple walls of certain gods and goddesses that were painted blue, because they've done a great job at, restoring, well, I guess the Egyptians did a great job at preserving and, building this stuff so that it would last so long. It's just crazy. But but there's still colors in a lot of these temples. They're obviously faded, but they're still there. And I saw these depictions of certain gods and goddesses that were painted blue. And it made me really curious about that blue guide that I had seen in my vision, because I was trying to put together those dots. And so I asked our guide, Lara, I was like, why did they paint these gods and goddesses blue? Did they believe that certain gods and goddesses had blue skin? And she was like, yeah, there's a couple of gods and goddesses that I can think of that had blue skin, Hapi, the river god, and Nut, the goddess of the sky and the cosmos, and Osiris, who's the partner to Isis. And, there's some others. And I was just like, okay, okay. And I'm waiting for just more information to come. I'm waiting for things to make sense. But then that kind of had me thinking about day 2. Because this was after that. Had me thinking about day 2 when we went to the Dandara temple, which inside is painted all blue, all over the pillars and the walls and the ceilings. There's all the art and the hieroglyphs and these paintings and everything is blue. And so each god and goddess kind of has this color that's associated with them. And Hathor, who's the goddess that belongs in the Dandara temple, her color is blue. And so we were all told to wear blue to her temple. So goddess Hathor, also something to note about her is that she has these elf-looking ears. They're actually cow ears, so they're not elf ears, but they kind of stick out to the sides like elf ears would, because she's depicted oftentimes as a cow. And so she's personified, she's a human, but she's kind of a cow. And she has these cute little ears that stick out to the side like a cow. So it reminded me again of that guide that I saw in my vision. And it just made me curious, could the goddess that is waiting for me in Egypt, could that goddess have been Hathor? But I wasn't totally convinced about anything at this point. I'm still just in my head, I'm thinking about things. I'm trying to just experience everything. And I wasn't even it wasn't like I was focused on this or concentrated on it or every day, gotta find all the stuff from my vision. Not at all. I was just letting things happen and letting things come to me. And when things would pop up and it would remind me of the vision, I would just get curious and I would ask questions and I would consider it and then I would move on. So let's talk a little bit about this visit to the Dandara temple. So some background context about this temple in general. The temple is known for its elaborate decoration, the detailed depictions of ancient gods, mystifying hieroglyphs, and the stunning astronomical ceiling paintings. So the temple is, again, dedicated to the goddess Hathor. And in ancient Egyptian mythology, Hathor was the goddess of many realms, including motherhood, beauty, music, dancing, and sensuality. She was also known as the goddess of women, mothers, and women's physical and psychological well-being. Hathor was associated with the sky and the movement of the planets, Venus, birth, rebirth, after death, and the cyclical rejuvenation of the cosmos. Hathor was one of the 42 state gods and goddesses of Egypt and one of the most popular and most powerful. She was the mother of Horus, who is the god of the sky, and Ra, who is the sun god. Hathor was also the protector of women, even though men also worshipped her. Hathor's principal animal form that she was known for was a cow, hence her ears that kind of stick out to the sides and they look like cow ears. So you can see different depictions of Hathor, different images of her in ancient Egyptian art. Sometimes she looks like a woman with these kind of cow horns on her head. Sometimes you can see that she's a woman and she has this sun disk that's sitting on top of her head between those horns. Sometimes she is she has the body of a woman, but she has the head of the cow, or sometimes she was completely depicted as entirely a cow. And they say Hathor was the personification of joy, goodness, celebration, and love. So she has a very cute energy to her, we'll say. So my experience at this temple, this was on day 2. And I was so tired this day because, again, this was the same day that we did the hot air balloon. So the wake up time was 2:45. We got on a boat, we got on a bus, we did the hot air balloon, we traveled back, and then we were walking through these temples. It was a very, very long, hot morning. There was also a heat wave happening on this day. So it was over 40 degrees Celsius, close to 100 Fahrenheit. The sun is beating down. We're in the desert. We haven't slept. I'm so fucking tired. We get into the temple and, our guides are walking us around and they're teaching us everything and we're looking at everything. And we spend some time in there learning about the different hieroglyphs and Goddess Hathor and all the things. And then they say to us like, okay, now you've got like 2 hours of free time to like roam the temple and find a spot and see if you feel connected to anything. And I honestly was just thinking like, what the fuck am I going to do for 2 hours? Because I literally feel like I'm going to collapse and fall over. Like it was the kind of tiredness where you're not sure if your eyes are going to stay open. You might have to like manually like hold them open. It was bad. So I honestly just started kind of like walking around the temple and I was going to try and find like a quiet corner or like a little room that no one was in or a spot where I could put my little towel down and just like sit and close my eyes and meditate or like nap. Honestly, that's like where I was at. I was so tired. I had no energy. I don't have any photos of myself in this temple. Like I was spent. But at one point, one of the men in the temples, like the temple keeper or one of the guards, I can't remember, but someone who's not affiliated with our group, but they're actually there like monitoring the temples, he grabbed Mel and I and took us down this corridor and up this ramp that led to these rooms that were like higher up on other floors of the temple. And sometimes they do that. They try to like show you the little secret passageways in the different parts of the temple that you might not find on your own. And so we're like, okay, let's just, we'll go with him. We'll follow him. And so he takes us into this like upper area and into this room and he's showing us all these beautiful depictions on the ceiling and these different hieroglyphs and we were just like in awe. And then he pulls us into this room and there's a skylight in the ceiling, just like a little square skylight, and the sun is like directly above it, so it's just beaming right through. And then below on the floor, there's like a cut out hole in the floor. So you can see all the way down through the entire temple to all the other floors to the bottom. And they've put this like metal kind of like grate over the hole in the floor so that you don't literally fall in it. But he just grabs me by the shoulders and he puts me right on top of this grate. So I'm standing right on top of the hole in the floor and directly under that skylight in the ceiling. And the rays from the sun just start pouring through all the way through the top of my head, like covering my whole body and then down through my feet and through all the floors of the temple. And I'm just standing there and I just feel compelled to like close my eyes, and he positions Mel in front of me. And so she's standing there with me and she takes my hands in her hands and she's holding my hands, and I'm just closing my eyes and I'm just standing there trying to soak up this moment. And I just feel the light pouring over me with such intensity. And I don't really know what happened in that moment, but I just felt so overcome with emotion. The tears just started rolling down my face, and I had no explanation for why I was crying or what I was feeling. I know I was tired, so like, I guess some people might say I was just crying because I had, pent up emotions, but something like happened in that moment. It was like, it was awe, it was reverence, it was gratitude, it was activation, it was, I don't know what it was, but like something was happening. I felt the light just like beaming through the top of my head and like running through my whole channel all the way through me and then down through the entire temple. And it was a really, really intense experience. I was just crying. Tears were pouring. And I remember hearing there were some other girls that were, walking through and they were in the room. And I remember someone saying, I feel like we should get a picture of this. And the guard or whoever was in the room was like, no pictures. And then I think eventually people kind of like filed out and they left. And it was just me and Mel standing there holding hands and the light pouring over me and just the tears running down my face. And it was just a really beautiful, raw, spiritual experience of some kind. I don't really know how else to describe it, but that was my experience in the Dendera temple. Was being so tired that I wanted to die, and then having this guard just like direct me to this room that I was obviously meant to go in and almost like force me into this spot and give me the gift of this experience. So that happened. And I didn't have any explanation for it then, and I don't really have an explanation for it now, but it certainly is connected to more of this deeper story about, my initiation with this Egyptian goddess. So we'll get more into that to tell you the other parts of this puzzle. I think it was the next night. So that happened. And then the next day, I believe, was when we went to Karnak Temple and I saw the blue gods and goddesses depicted on the walls. And I asked Lara about, were there blue gods? And I had already seen Hathor's ears. And so I was starting to think about those elf ears and the blue. And then that night at the hotel, we had a circle, all the women together, and we pulled some cards from this oracle deck. And the card that I pulled was Hathor's card. But to tell you the truth, like in that moment, I hadn't connected any of these dots really to the point of significance of any kind. So I pulled Hathor's card and I was like, oh, that's interesting. Cool. And I took a screenshot of the description of what that card meant in the little oracle book. And because everyone was pulling cards, everyone wanted to find their description in the book. So we were just kind of passing the book around and taking pictures of the description of our card and then passing along the book so that the next person could do the same thing. So I took a picture of the description and I didn't have time to read it because our schedules were so packed. We were so busy. Any free time that we had, we were using to sleep. And so I honestly just didn't have time to read the full description of the card that I had just pulled. So I didn't end up reading it until days and days and days later. But what I want to also bring into this conversation is the fact that throughout this trip, I was having lots of conversations with the other women about motherhood and entrepreneurship. And you guys probably know motherhood has been a major theme that's been coming up for me recently. If you haven't already, you'll definitely want to listen to a recent episode called The Art of Authenticity, where I basically cry about all of the stuff that's been coming up for me around motherhood. And so a lot of the women on this trip were moms, and obviously, Mel was there, who was the one that brought us all together, and she's a mom and an entrepreneur, and she's trying to conceive her second baby. And Shoshana was there, who's pregnant and in the process of entering that space of motherhood and entrepreneurship. And so there was just a lot of reasons for these conversations to be coming up. But actually, this was one of my main intentions for Egypt, was to hopefully get some clarity around the next phase of my life and how or when motherhood is going to fit into that. And because I had been having so many questions about that and so many thoughts and so many visions, and that had really been a theme that was really coming up for me and kind of scaring me, I thought, okay, well, I'm going on this pilgrimage to Egypt. Maybe I'll get some answers there. Maybe there'll be some clarity. And I really went in, not attached to that, but just thinking maybe something will come up for me. Maybe there'll be some sort of answer or some sort of timeline or some sort of insight or some sort of peace or understanding or something. And then of course we had so many conversations about it just because of the nature of the group and how many mothers and entrepreneurs there were in the group that we were traveling with. So that's also a part of this that gets woven in, because Hathor is the goddess of fertility and she's the protector of women, and it's all just very connected. So to kind of bring this all home in a sense, on day 7, we landed back in Cairo and we check into our hotel. We were staying at the Mina House, which is a really beautiful hotel because right from our room, we opened up our sliding glass door and it was just gorgeous, unobstructed views of the Great Pyramid of Giza right from our hotel room, which was absolutely insane. So we get into the hotel, we just arrived. We were on a flight from Aswan to Cairo. We're like, all right, let's, settle in. So my roommate and I are sitting in our room. We're sitting on the beds and we're just kind of looking through our phones and talking about stuff. And I decide, I never read that description from the oracle card that we pulled all those days ago. And I really want to see, what that Hathor card was about. So I'm going to read you guys the card and we are going to connect these dots. So it says Hathor, light activation, acceleration, brilliance, stand in your light. Hathor, also known as Hetiru, is the cow goddess of ancient Egypt and the solar goddess who is strongly connected to the sky and fertility. Hathor worship dates back to the 3rd millennium BCE. Hathor is easily recognized for she wears a sun disk on her head held in place by 2 horns relating to the cow and to wisdom. She is also widely represented as a human-like being with a pair of cow's ears, which is what the image in this deck is based on. Hetiru means from the house of Horus, and it has become accepted that Hathor is the divine consort of the hawk-headed deity Horus. This connection gives her cosmic energy and a link to the stars, star beings, and star potential. It is also believed that she is likely the daughter of the sun god Re, and therefore carries the infinite light of the sun. Lots of references to the sun here, if you haven't noticed. Light activation, infinite light of the sun, star beings, all the stuff, okay? goddess of the sky. And this is the part that gets us, okay? So I'm sitting on the bed, I'm reading this, and I start to read this aloud to my roommate because she's like, what does it say? I'm so curious. So I'm reading this aloud to her, and I'm like, holy shit, this one part, like, what the fuck? It says, in modern spirituality, Hathor is the face of a divine race known as the Hathors, enlightened beings from the stars who are helping people on Earth reach their highest potential. And my roommate goes, oh my God. Like you say that all the time. You talk about that all the time, like helping people reach their highest potential. You talk about that in your podcast. And I'm like, I know, I do talk about that all the time. What the fuck? And to add to this, we had recently had a conversation, my roommate and I, about the fact that I never have deja vu. I have never had deja vu in my life. It's like a weird, quirky fact about me. I've not met anyone else that has also never had deja vu. So we were like, what does that mean? Like there must be some sort of spiritual meaning. Like what the fuck does it mean? And she told me, she was like, well, I've heard that there's certain people that are like star seeds and they have all these kinds of like different experiences because they're not the same as other humans. And so maybe it just means that like you're a star seed. And so this part where it says there is a divine race known as the Hathors, which are these enlightened beings from the stars who are helping people on Earth reach their highest potential. We both kind of looked at each other and were like, am I a Hathor? Like, what does this mean? And so in the moment that I looked up to her and I said, I think I'm a Hathor, all of the electricity in our room cut out, lights, TV, everything, poof, just like dead. And we both screamed. We were like, ah! It was like a Freaky Friday moment. It was too weird and too creepy. We both had goosebumps. We like jumped up on our beds. We were creeped the fuck out. The lights had cut, the TV cut in the exact moment that I said, I think I'm a Hathor. All the electricity went out and we just screamed. We were like, what the fuck? And so then I wrote in the group chat of everyone that was in Egypt, I was like, did anyone else's electricity just go out? Like what the fuck happened? No one said that their lights went out. No one else had that experience. We were like, whoa, that was weird. It was just weird. It was freaky. It was like when you've had like a paranormal experience or a moment, it's just like an intuitive feeling. You just know like things are connected. So that was wild. And I'm just going to read you like the last little bit of this card to draw like the final connections to everything. So the next part of the card is really just about like the message that's here for you. So it says, your message: light, joy, and success surround you now. If you have been going through a dark, challenging time, the clouds are now parting and the light of the sun is shining upon you. This is a time of acceleration and success. You're beginning to build momentum and things are starting to move forward. Old dreams and visions may come to light now, for whatever has been blocking you or holding you back is now being released, making space for an influx of energy, drive, and movement. Hathor is encouraging you to set your sights higher than before. Reach for the sun. Bask in your own brilliance. If you have held back on expressing any of your talents or bringing to light information that will support your growth, now is the time to bring these things into the light of the day. If you have been holding back on a project or waiting on the right time to move forward, that time is now. The wheels are turning and your life is moving. Enjoy the light. So as you can see, there are so many freaking references in this card to the light. Stand in your light. The light of the sun is shining upon you. Reach for the sun. Bask in your brilliance. Enjoy the light. And it all just felt too connected to that moment that I was literally placed to stand in the light inside the house of Hathor, inside of her temple. I was literally there, standing in the light of the sun. As it says, stand in your light. The light of the sun is shining upon you. As it says, reach for the sun. That's all I was doing. I was standing there looking up, reaching for the sun. Bask in your brilliance. I could feel the sun pouring over me and I was just basking in that moment. And the closing line of this card is enjoy the light. So we have one last piece. I should say two last pieces to this whole story about my initiation with Goddess Hathor in Egypt. And the next piece is about when we went to the Sphinx. And then after that, we will talk about what happened when I had my reading with the medicine man. But I just wanted to share this part of the journey with you because for me, I think this whole experience of connecting these dots with, the goddess that was waiting for me and the guide that I saw in my vision and that the card that I pulled and my experience in her temple and all of these things just like connecting. For me, this absolutely was the most profound part of my trip to Egypt. And I I do believe that it is the main reason why I was meant to be there. And it was the experience that I was meant to have. And I think it's no coincidence that she's the goddess of fertility. And I went into this trip with so many questions about motherhood and what that means for me, what that's going to look like. And so the final piece of this story is really special. I have to stop crying on the podcast. It's not okay. Anyway, the final piece of this whole story is really special, and that has to do with our visit to the Sphinx and also the reading with the medicine man. So we'll talk about the Sphinx first. So we went to visit the Sphinx on the final day. So the Sphinx is that giant statue near the pyramids on the Giza Plateau. And it is said that the Akashic records, if you know what the Akashic records are supposedly stored underneath the left paw of the Sphinx. And so once again, we woke up super early and we were lucky enough to have a private visit at the Sphinx. And we were actually able to all sit along the walls of her paws. So you know, like the Sphinx pose in yoga is when you go like this. You'll only know what I'm talking about if you're watching on YouTube, but when you go like this, right? And so she has her paws stretched out, but the statue is so big that like the paws are like kind of like walls when you like walk into the actual statue of the Sphinx. And so we were able to go into that little section between her paws and, lean against the walls of her paws and just like sit there in ceremony, in circle, close our eyes, and be guided into this journey of uncovering our Akashic records and things that were in there that might, be ready to be revealed to us. And so that was another like pinch me moment. Like, what the hell, we're here at the Sphinx on the Giza Plateau, like by ourselves. The sun is rising. The sky is this incredible color. We're able to do this private ceremony. Like, wow, 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 wow. Just so many moments of gratitude. And so in that experience, in that visualization, I actually saw Goddess Hathor like coming out of the clouds, and she was holding a swaddled baby, and she handed me the baby. She handed me the baby. I don't know what it means, you guys, but everyone was like, whoa, afterwards when we were talking about this. So like, there is a spirit there's a spirit baby in your realm right now. Something is trying to come through for you. Like, it's going to happen really soon for you. And I don't know if that's true, but whatever that means, I guess it could even just be like a confirmation of all these question marks that I've had of like Goddess Hathor coming to tell me like, you will be a mother someday. Maybe it's not soon. I don't know if I'm ready for it to be soon. I have a lot of fears around that. But yeah, that was a really like special kind of like full circle moment to this whole journey with Hathor. And the final piece of that Hathor puzzle, which actually brought me to tears, will be revealed later when I talk about my reading with the Egyptian medicine man. So all of that and more is coming up in the next part of this Egypt recap. Be sure to tune in to the next episode to hear all about the medicine man, the tree of life, the wealth and wisdom temple, doing shadow work with goddess Sekhmet, Egyptian lessons in sales, and so much more. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you loved this episode, if you want to share it with someone, just copy the link, send it to them. Let them know you were thinking about them. If you have someone in your life that you want to travel ancient Egypt with, send them this episode. I love you guys. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.